I think we'll learn a whole lot. Before we get started, let's say a quick word of prayer. Loving and gracious God, it is always with awe and humility that we enter into your presence. As you teach us more and more about how you speak to us, we pray that we would hear with the ears of our hearts, with an openness to receive and understand your grace and your love. Amen.
Amen. Okay. Hello?
So are we're audible.
That's wonderful. Perfect.
Okay.
Everyone can hear me.
Yeah.
Everyone can hear me well. I'm generally pretty loud too, as my family can tell. My son especially could tell. Really loud. Well, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Tinny, and thank you, Reverend Tracy and Eileen, for inviting me today to share about Buddhism, about what it means to be a Buddhist, as well as Reverend Tracy said, some key concepts of Buddhism. So as you can see from the slide, Tinny Widjaja, that's an Indonesian name, so I'm Chinese-Indonesian, and I moved to Austin 6 years ago with my family. They're over here, so that's Walter, and that's another Walter there, so it's a Walter Jr. and Walter III. So we moved here from Singapore 6 years ago, and I was a banker for about 20 years in Singapore. When I moved to Austin, I had the privilege to be a stay-at-home mom, they said. And so fast forward now, 6 years, I have been involved with many nonprofits, and you can see I sit on two boards. One of them is the Buddha Light International Association, BLIA, and also the Interfaith Ambassador of Lake Travis. So I founded that organization about 3 years ago in Lake Travis as an interfaith organization. Okay, and so I'm here today to talk about that key concept. So if we could do we have to the next slide? Yes, there you go. So I came from a temple here in Austin. It's called Xiang Yun Temple. So Xiang Yun Temple, the name itself means, as you can see, Xiang means fragrant, Yun means cloud. Why? Because we are located in the hill country, the beautiful hill country, just a little bit past the Austin 360 bridge, up on the hill, 15 acres land, and we are surrounded by cedar park, lovely, fragrant cedar park. And yeah, allergy, no. And also on certain days, like say today, it will be like shrouded in beautiful clouds, right? So it's called fragrant cloud. That name was given by our master, our founder, when he came and basically baptized the place for us. That was in year 2000. So we've been in Austin for a little bit, for about, since year 2000.
I think that makes you old timers by Austin standards.
Oh, yeah. It has been around for a long time, yes. And as you can see, that's a temple. And on the right-hand corner, that is, I probably can't see properly, but that is our temple director, Venerable Jechi. And I believe Reverend Tracy had showed the video of her. She's our temple director, and she's also my teacher, Venerable Jechi. And today I will be talking a little bit about her concepts that she has, mentioned to you in the video. All right? Okay. And let's go on to the next slide. To understand Buddhism, I guess we need to go back to the history of Buddhism. When is Buddhism found? How was it found? What is it all about? So it was found more than 2,600 years ago in India by an Indian prince. We talked about Hindu the last round, and Buddhism is pretty closely related to Hindu. So it was founded by Prince Siddhartha Gautama. That was his name before he became Buddha. He was born a prince, a very rich prince actually, and he shared all his worldly identity, if any, to go on a journey, to go on a self-exploratory journey, self-learning, to find the truth. Basically, what is the truth? What is the universal truth? What is it? What should we do, basically? And he finally got the answer, and when he did, that means Buddha, or Buddhism was born. He was born as the name Sakyamuni Buddha, okay? So Prince Siddhartha Gautama, no more. Now his name is Sakyamuni Buddha. Literal translation means the original teacher, the first teacher. And Buddha itself, the word means is the enlightened one. That's all that it means, okay? Yeah. So that is Sakyamuni Buddha. And very important that from this history that he is not a god. He's not divinity. He's basically just a normal person who's decided that all the suffering he's seen around him, why is that? I need to find an answer. What's happening here and how could I help? Okay? So he went on that journey and become a very wise teacher, a spiritual doctor even I call it, to prescribe a solution, like a medicine, a path for people to be free of your suffering, of your pain, basically. That's all Buddha or Buddhism is about, that self-journey, that self-learning, basically. Okay? Next slide, please. I will share more about his teachings, but let's visit how Buddhism gets spread or get even here to the United States, for instance, right? So Buddhism, as I mentioned, was born in India, and then from there it traveled to parts of Asia first. And first it went to South and Southeast Asia, and that's when a Theravada tradition was born, okay? And then from then on, it traveled up north to East Asia, and that's when Mahayana Buddhism is born. And from then on, it traveled further up north, okay, from to other parts of China, if you want to call that, to Tibet, Bhutan, Mongolia, even parts of Russia. And that's when Vajrayana was born. Okay, so you have 3 schools of Buddhism in the world: Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana. How to tell them apart? Next slide, please. Oh, there was one before this, I think. But that's okay. I can talk about this too first. So you can tell from a few things. One would be from how the temple looks even, right? So you can see that, right? So Mahayana, and that is where my temple is from China, from Taiwan, I should say, not China, Taiwan. And we are Mahayana, and the architecture itself looks very Chinese, isn't it, right? Flat roof, okay, golden roof, flat roof, and very bright colors. And Theravada, which is born in more Southeast Asia, they have a very different architecture, which is more pointy. So any of you have been to Thailand? You've seen a lot of those temples over there. The architecture is different, very pointy looking, right? Yeah. And you can tell straight away those are Theravada Buddhism. And Vajrayana kind of look a bit like Mahayana because Vajrayana technically is a branch. It's a branch of Mahayana Buddhism. It comes out from there. So you can see they kind of share the same character as well. Okay, next slide, please. That's the first one I wanted to show is even the monastics wear different design and color of robes, basically. And as you can see, Mahayana, again, that would be where my temple comes from. And that is our founder, Venerable Master Xing Yun. And I think from the video, you can also see Venerable JT wears the same kind of brownish-looking robes, right? Those are Mahayana monks and nuns. They wear kind of a brownish-looking robe. And the Theravada, again, you can see, different color. They wear bright orange, typically. And another characteristic that tells them apart is they walk around with an alms bowl. They carry bowls around them.
So the Mahayana do not seek alms?
No, we don't.
Oh, okay.
No, we don't. So that's the difference. Again, if you're in Thailand or even at parts of here in the United States, if you see monk walking around, bright orange with a bowl, those are the Theravada monk. So they will walk outside of the temple, okay, go around to the community, not begging necessarily, but be part of the community, teaching, and then as a return, the community will take care of them, will give them food. Okay? And that is why some Buddhism not totally vegetarian. The Mahayana nuns and monks, because they live in the temple, you can kind of control the diet, right? And so they can be 100% vegetarian. However, if you are Theravada monks, if you walk around, you eat whatever people give you, right? And it's okay, right? If they give you meat, you eat it, right? Because thank you, so thank you, you eat it. Therefore, not all Buddhism is necessarily vegetarian, okay? And next is Vajrayana. So Vajrayana, again, something very different. They wear kind of a red, I would say maroonish looking color, bright red, okay? And that reminds you of one of the very prominent Buddhist, I guess, person, the Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama kind of wears something like that, bright red, bright maroonish looking color, and he is from a Vajrayana Buddhism line of school, okay? And very interesting, one thing they do there, did you see what they're doing? So they're dueling, they're fighting actually, okay? Not violently fighting or martial art fighting, that is actually fighting, debating. They are debating the teaching, basically, and that's how they learn. So they'll do, if I may. You see what they're doing? They're using their beats, okay? They'll go. I'll ask you a question, you answer me back. That's what they're doing right there, okay? So they'll be dancing, they'll be chanting, and then they'll go, what is it? Answer me back, basically. So that's how they learn. So every Buddhism has different traditions. So those are the three ones. So now you can tell the difference. When you walk, you meet somebody, I know which school you're from, okay? All right, next slide. And even the statue, the depiction of Buddha is very different. So we saw the robe, the color, we saw the architecture, and this is a bit architecture as well. As you see Mahayana, again, Chinese, from China. The depiction of Buddha is a bit round looking, right? Round cheek, round nose, and even the hair is a bit round, It's a very Chinese looking person, right? Because, yeah, religion is about that, isn't it? It's about tradition of the local people. So you blend in. You use
this
that.
is what Christians do with the image of Jesus.
Right. To be familiar with your local community or your tradition, the country that you are in. So our Buddha statue, historically, right? They are created to be very much in line with the local people. So you can see the Mahayana, round looking, looks like a lot like Chinese people, and the Theravada again. Following the architecture, right? The pointy hair or the pointy roof, basically. So you can see typically all the Buddha statues look like that. And that feature is sharper. So you can see Thai people, probably Vietnamese Thai, they're kind of different from the Chinese people per se, right? So they have a bit of sharp feature, as you can see the statue. And Vajrayana is somewhere in between. Somewhere in between, as you can see. Okay, still a very flat, hairstyle, okay, right? Not like the Theravada. Okay, right, yeah. So that's history, that's how it looks, that's how it's been presented to the world. Now let's, next one, look at the teaching itself. And this is a very common symbolism of Buddhism, and I think it's represented in your banner as well. We are represented, the Buddhism is represented by the wheel of Dharma, we call it. And the word Dharma itself means teaching. Buddha's teaching. And it can also mean the point of realization when you are enlightened. That's literally what it can be used or what it means, basically. And the wheel of Dharma typically is represented by 8 spokes. Yeah, 8 of them, okay? And it represents the 8 noble path. That's the teaching, the path to the liberation, to the freedom of suffering. I will talk more about that, what is that about. And the turning a wheel of Dharma is essentially a very poetic, basically, description of how Dharma is taught, how Buddha teach that Buddhism to the world, basically. So in Mahayana, we teach that the wheel of Dharma, the teaching, was turned 3 times. Okay? First one is the first sermon, the first teaching of Buddha when he was enlightened. After the journey of his enlightenment, he came out and started teaching the first wheel of turning, and that's his first teaching, and it's called the 4 Noble Truths. That's fundamentally the teaching of Buddhism, the concepts. It's all summarized in that 4 Noble Truths. Again, I'll go through them in a little bit. The 4 Noble Truths, the 8 Noble Path, we call it. Those are fundamentally the teaching of Buddha, the first turning. And the second turning happened about, after Buddha was gone. Well, he's a person, he died, right? After it's gone, the teaching continues. It happens probably about 500 years after he died. And that was roughly around the same time when Mahayana Buddhism emerged. So the second turning of the wheel, the second teaching, if any, it moves away moves away from the concept of individual enlightenment. The first one is about the individual enlightenment itself. So the second turning of that wheel means more the perfection of that teaching. It's actually in the practice. That's what basically it says. So it's great to know it. It's great to understand that teaching. But to perfect it, it is better if we practice it. Right? So that second turning is, how do I, while I cultivate and achieve my enlightenment, how do I help others? How do I help others achieve their enlightenment as well? Right? So that is the second wheel of turning, basically.
If you don't mind my interpreting,
yes.
Does this give a greater emphasis then on community, on the Sangha at this point?
Yes,
or?
yes,
Okay.
absolutely right,
Okay.
absolutely
As
right.
opposed to
just your own
individual
personal, learning, basically. And I think, which I can talk a little bit later as well, I think the Buddhism is about that, about self-explanatory, it's about self-learning. But I think on its own, it does not serve any purpose. Okay, it serves more purpose better if you actually share it with others and help others with it, basically. And in that journey, you help others achieve their enlightenment as well together. Okay, and the third wheel, the turning, it goes even deeper than that, deeper than your own learning. It goes to the truth, one of the truth, the universal truth that Buddha nature is evident in every one of us. In you, Eileen, in me, you, all of you, right? Okay? It's always there. It's something that's pervasive in nature, in every one of us, right? It's not just a religion concept. It's not just a belief system, but it's more about the truth that every one of us has the capacity to be Buddha. And Buddha in this word is not Buddha the person. It's not Buddha the definitive symbol, religious symbol. It's not that. But the nature, the enlightenment. Because Buddha, the word itself means enlightened. You are awakened, basically. So every one of us has the capacity to be awakened. That Buddha nature is in every one of us. So that's the concept of the dispersion, if any, of the teaching. And it's a very important concept for us, especially for Mahayana Buddhism, to understand that, to be able to continue to cultivate and then bring that benefit to others and continue to build our community. Right. Yeah. Now let's talk about that, as I promised, the Four Noble Truths and the Eight Noble Paths. What is that all about? Some of you might have read it before, right? So it's basically the Four Noble Truths is about the four truths. The first is the truth of suffering. Okay, that doesn't mean that we all must suffer. Does not mean that. It's different. It means that suffering is inevitable. It happens. It happens to all of us, basically. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what you are. Suffering happens. It's just there. And the second is the truth of what caused the suffering. So suffering here, according to Buddha, is not just the physical suffering or even the condition, the situation that you're in. For instance, you lost someone, you suffer, you're sad, and you lose something, you fail in something, you feel sad, depressed. It goes beyond that. Suffering is the concept of everything is not, permanent, right? Everything is temporary. And because it's temporary, and we forget that, we try to hold on. We try to hold on to things, right? Thinking that it's all permanent. It's here forever, right? And the fact that we do that, that's why we suffer. The cause of suffering is because we hold on. We like to hold on to things, to our desire, right? To stuff around us, even to ourselves, right? That changes all the time. Nothing is permanent. You hold on to that, you suffer. And the third one is the truth of the ending of suffering. That there is a way. There is a way to do that. So through happiness, through joy, through liberation, or nirvana, we call it the concept of heaven, or nirvana, as is literally translated. It's not a place. It's not a place that you go to, basically. It's a state of mind when you are free. You are free from that suffering of continuing to hold on to things. That is the truth of the ending of suffering, that you are in nirvana, basically. And the last truth is there is a path to get there. There is a path to get to that liberation, to that end of suffering, and that's called the Noble Eightfold Path. So these are the prescription by the spiritual doctor, by Buddha, that These are the 4 truths you need to know. And then I'm going to prescribe to you the medicine to take every day, right? So that you can finally be free of that illness, basically the illness of your mind, right? Okay, next slide, please. Oh, that's another one. There you go. So he prescribed that, Buddhism, when he came up with that prescription, when he came up with that method, so to speak, he doesn't just want people to just believe in it, right? I think Buddhism essentially is about that, about learning about the concept and then understanding it, digesting it, and then practicing it and testing it in your experience. Does it work for me? How does it work for me? Was it done for me, basically? And that's all he wants you to do, basically, is to, take that learning, take that concept, and see how it works for you. And he himself tested it. So when he was going through that self-learning process, he was fasting for more than 40 days in the forest under what we call very famous, the Bodhi tree, right? Okay, and he nearly died because he didn't eat anything. If you didn't eat anything for 40 days, you wouldn't end up in a very good place, right? So he nearly died as well. And then one of his layperson came, a very kind lady, as you can see in the picture, right there. A very kind lady basically gave him rice milk or rice water to drink. And she said, teacher, please take this because you will not be good to anyone if you're dead. But what can you do when you die, basically? And in that moment, actually, that very simple act of kindness, a very simple moment, Buddha was enlightened, actually. That was the moment when he realized that, you know what, this woman is right. This woman is very wise. I have been very ignorant in my ways of learning, that I thought if I just fast and cut myself off from the world, not eat anything, remove myself from the temptation, that I'll be okay. That is my path to salvation, not true, right? So he took it and he realized that, yep, I need to prescribe to people why we suffer and how do I get out of this suffering in the right way. And that's why he prescribed the middle way. Don't be extreme in life, right? One way or the other is not good. Always take that middle path. And when you walk on that middle path, bear in mind certain things you need to do. And that is the 8 noble paths. So I've listed them down. That's what it is. Have the right view and intention, your thoughts. It all starts in here, right? My son would probably say, oh my God, there she goes again. There she goes again, right? That's what I've been trying to teach him. It starts from here, right? You're ignorant. You're ignorant of things. Have the right view, the right intention. And then it all comes out in what? Your speech and your action. If you don't say anything, sometimes people don't know what you think, right? How ignorant you are. But the minute it leaves you, oh yeah, we all know that. Oh yeah, you're done. It leaves you and then you're done. Same thing. And you decide what to do with it, with your 2 hands that you can, right? Do I choose this? Do I make good choices? Yeah, my son will probably rolling his eyes again, right? Choices in life, what do we do, right? Walk that path with the right view, right intention, right speech, right action, the right livelihood. All of us need to, right? Do something with our life, the right livelihood. A proper life that does not hurt people, right? And the right effort, what do I do to continue this practice? The right concentration, the right mindfulness. And those 2, the last 2, is what meditation comes in. Right? We need to give ourselves time in our effort to cultivate ourselves. Too much noise. It's not good, right? You can't. How can you think? How can you understand? How can you, digest things if there's too much noise going on around you, inside you, around you, right? How do I have the right concentration and the right mindfulness? Which is why meditation is an integral part of Buddhism. We use it as a tool, not the end, right? It's as a means to an end. It's a tool for us, basically. So there you go. You learn a bit about the history, about the teaching, right? Okay. Next question that I normally receive from people is, next slide, please. Oh, no, the one before. Sorry. That's the one, yes. How do you become a Buddhist? People ask that questions like, oh, Tinny, how, what should you do, right? How to become a Buddhist? My personal answer to that would be, as a lay person, is, as I mentioned, many times, learn, read, understand, understand it for yourself. It's your own journey, your own self-learning. It's your own progress, your path. Learn that, do it by yourself, and then once you're ready, that's when Venerable Jochi will say, okay, strengthen that commitment by taking refuge. So that's a ceremony in Buddhist religion. We call it, it's a bit like being baptized, in Christianity. You take refuge. You take refuge in the three things: the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Okay? And taking refuge, literally, it means it's taking shelter. Shelter from what? Right? Shelter from all that suffering that's going on within you. All that emotion, all that brokenness, right? All that pain that you need to take refuge, to take shelter from. Make that commitment that you want to be sheltered from that. You want to find a way to be sheltered from that. And I think Eileen was, I think we asked questions about important to understand that the cycle of life, reborn, the samsara, basically, right? All that suffering, it continues on, and that is life, basically. So if you hear the word samsara, life, be reborn in Buddhism, yes, it is an important concept, but not necessarily in a sense of reborn equal to reincarnation. Reincarnation in a sense when soul migrate from one body to the next, or from one life to the next. That's not what it means in Buddhism. It's different. Reincarnation and being reborn is very different. And we don't, in Buddhism, don't embrace the reincarnation in that sense, in that definition, basically. Mm-hmm.
Correct me if I'm wrong. The Buddha comes out of this Hindu milieu where there's a concept of Atman, or soul. And he says not Atman, but Anatman, no soul.
No soul,
self.
Yes.
So you can't have a no soul migrating, right? There is no soul to be migrating.
There is no soul to be migrating,
But how does being reborn work? Because that's fascinating.
Good question. It fascinates people, and I get that question as well. Oh, so Buddhism believe in reincarnation? Well, if you say reincarnation, it's like, oh, today I'm dead, tomorrow I'm going to be in another body, so to speak. My soul migrate. Then no, that's not what we believe in. So being reborn here doesn't mean that you have to die to be reborn. You can be reborn in many lifetimes, in many times in one lifetime, if that makes sense. Right? So I would prescribe to the notion that you can be reborn many times in this lifetime. And that's when that realms come in. So if we have six realms, we call it. And that realms is not, again, supernatural or magical realms that my son would go play, video game, like, oh, we are in a dragon realm, we're in a, a superhero realm. It's not that, but it's more a condition that we move every day in our life from one condition to the next. I'll give you an example. The realm of hell, right? We in Buddhism we describe it and you are in hell. What does that mean? Hell means that when you have an unchecked anger and aggression, you are in hell, basically. I know that. When my unchecked anger comes in, it's like, oh, yes, I don't want to be. I felt like I'm in hell, basically. Like, it's like I just want to get out of it. And when you apply that teaching, you remove yourself from that. Are you reborn? Yes, you are. You are now reborn. You are reborn, moving on to the next realm. The next realm of human realm, we call it, right? Where I am enlightened, my eyes are now open. I am awakened, knowing, understanding that I was in hell. I was in that anger, unchecked hell realm, and I don't want to be there. How do I get out of that, right? Another one is very famous realm is the hungry ghost. Again, no ghost there. Okay, although you use the term hungry ghost, right? There is no ghost in there. The ghost is your, again, insatiable desire of wanting something continuously. You are never satisfied, right? I want more money, right? I want more fame, I want more of this, I want more of that. And if you're continuously in that condition, in that realm, you suffer. Right? How do I remove myself from there so then I can be again back into my human realm as an enlightened human being, enlightened person with my eyes wide open, that I know that is my cause of suffering and I know how to remove myself from it. Okay, so that is a very important concept, although it can be very supernatural, feel like it is, you know.
It sounds super, right, when you talk about ghosts and hell.
Yes, people misunderstood that in Buddhism. You thought, oh yeah, it's soul died, reborn, reincarnated, and you're in this realm, like what is that, right? So that's basically a very practical way of explaining.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you take that refuge, you want to be sheltered from that pain, that suffering, you want to be liberated in the triple gem, we call it the three jewels, the Buddha, the teacher, the Dharma, the teaching, and the Sangha, the community. So I want to take refuge in the Buddha. And again, it's not just Buddha, the statue, Buddha, the historical figure even, but it's more taking the vow to myself. We talked about that Buddha nature, right, in every one of us. So it's that taking that refuge in myself, making that vow, commitment to myself, that I will find you. And I trust in you, right? I trust in my Buddha nature that I will find it. And that will help me in my journey, right? I will continue to find it. We sometimes lose it. We lose it every day, I think. I forgot it's in us, right? So that is, I take that refuge to trust myself that I can find it. I can find that Buddha nature in me. And second, trust in the teaching. How do I get there? How do I find it? That teaching itself, that concepts, right? That is a very practical tool that I will remind myself every day. That right mind, right view, right speech, right action, right mindfulness, all that. Believe in that teaching, trust in that teaching to guide me to where I need to be. And the last one is the community, the Sangha. Don't underestimate that. I think it's very important. Cultivation in basically, in a vacuum, it's not a cultivation, It's not about chanting. It's not about just praying. It's not just about, meditating for hours and hours. It's not about that. It's about challenging yourself to be in the real world. What else could be more real than your community, right? Of people who support you, because cultivation is hard. We fail every day, right? We need to have the right support to help us. And also to support others is important. So when you practice, you will be less selfish, right? You'll be less arrogant, knowing that you know everything. You'll be more humble, right? You will help other people. Doesn't matter who you are. I came to the community. I'm not me, no self, right? I'm just there. I'm just there to cultivate and help others, basically. So that community is very, very important. And again, back to that turning of wheel, right? It's more about practicing it, to share it with others and help others along the way, so they can also enjoy that enlightenment, that liberation, basically. Yeah. So that's how you become a Buddhist. All right? So we've gone through the history, a bit about the what's the concept and how to become a Buddha. And now I think I will stop talking. And open it up. Next slide, please. To questions. So I've listed down the common questions that I do receive from people about Buddhism. Okay? So I'm not going through all of them. So I will, open up to you, Eileen, and everyone.
Just being mindful, to borrow a term from Buddhism, of the time. How much time do we have for questions?
We have about 10 or 12 minutes.
Okay, maybe we'll just dive into questions from the audience.
And if anyone has a question, I can bring the mic to you so that everyone can hear your questions. So just let me know.
It can be one of those. It can be anything that you want to. Again, I'm mindful of time, right? Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for coming. The work that you're doing, especially with the interfaith organization, is something I'm interested in.
Sure.
Especially considering the political climate that we have in this day and time. And so, my question would be, what would be, from your perspective, some of the better ways for us to propagate the concepts of interfaith acceptance of all the different ways of viewing the world and all, peacefully coexist together and be able to have intelligent, dialogue without throwing each other under the bus, as it were.
Yes. Thank you. That's a great question. And yes, I think interfaith community is becoming even more important in this climate. And I am blessed being part of that and representing or taking with me that Buddhism profile or image or representation, if any. Buddhism is has a pretty positive image here, I think, in the United States and in the world. And I wouldn't say fairly positive, because there are incidents where Buddhism, has not been used, or been propagated in a way that it should be, or the violence in Myanmar, for instance, things like that. That has definitely tarred our image. But here in the United States, I have the privilege of being involved in a lot of interfaith myself, and as well as Interfaith Act of Texas, Interfaith Central Texas. And we use that forum to basically introduce not just the belief, but also the people behind it. Because sometimes, it's about people make decisions. You're Muslim, therefore you're this, right? You're Buddhist, therefore you're peaceful, you're this, which is great, but that's not just all of us. We can be violent, So it's about the people behind it, right? Once you get to know the person behind it, we actually have more things in common than we think we have. So being part of that interfaith, that's what we do. We bring people together. We have an event we call Meet the Community, right? So we bring everyone out and just say, have you met a Muslim friend? Have you met a Jewish friend? Have you met a Hindu friend? So talk to them, And I think that's one of the ways you start. You start with that. Once you get to know the person, all of a sudden, we can focus more on what is more in common than separate us, basically. Yeah. Of course.
Hi. Thank you very much for your service. I feel like I'm a better person just, listen to your teaching today.
Thank you.
Can you tell me, can you talk a little bit about karma?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. That's a good question. There you go. Is karma fate, and does it punish? People will also believe that, you did some bad things, you get punished, right? Because that's karma, right? So karma in Buddhism does not mean that it's fate. And actually, even the literal translation on its own is not fate, basically. It's actually action. Yeah. So karma actually means action. So what you do impacts you. That is your karma. Your action is your karma. And we are impacted by that karma every minute of our day. That conscious decision, what action do I take next? And to me, my philosophy is, life is living your consequences of your decision. Your karma is that. It's living, making that choice. Then you arrive somewhere. It's something is not always in itself. It's a condition. It's conditioned by something else, right? So the state of your life is conditioned by what you do, basically. So that is karma. And karma is also a conscious decision, a conscious act. And for us in Mahayana Buddhism, and especially in humanistic Buddhism, we believe we will focus on the karma of thinking the good thoughts, saying good words, and doing a good deeds. And if you remember that, karma, that volition acts, that conscious acts, you'll be fine. Right? You won't have time to do other things. Too busy doing good.
Does the practice of Buddhism teach children to meditate and teach adults to meditate, and how is that accomplished?
Yeah, sure. As I mentioned, meditation is a very important tool to be able to have the right thoughts, the right minds, to be quiet. Yes, we use meditation. All ages can practice that. All level can practice that, basically. And there's another misconception that meditation is about clearing your mind, emptying your mind. That is your first mistake. Because if you try that, you'll never succeed. Therefore, you say, I can't meditate. How do you do it? I can't clear my mind. Mind is not supposed to be empty. cannot be empty. We think all the time, therefore we are, right? You know, say we're human, you know, or my master would say, your monkey brain. You say, you know, just like, you know, telling you to do things, right? So it's not about that. The first mistake is thinking you can clearly empty your mind. No. Meditation is actually about teaching your mind to let a thought comes in and let that other thought go.
Not be attached to it.
Exactly. Okay. So that is actually, if you understand that, when you understand that that mind is here, that particular mind that I don't want is here, you already succeed. That is the first step of meditation, knowing it's arrived, it's here, right? You know, I'm angry, it's here. How do I then breathe? You know, however you breathe, right? You know, you can walk, you can sit, right? You know, you can wash dishes, you know, whatever you do.
Washing dishes can be an act of meditation.
Absolutely,
right.
It can, okay? As long as the act of meditation itself is understanding your mind has arrived, that monkey brain has arrived. How do I let that monkey go? Right? Without being, you know, all this, that emotion in you, right? How do I peacefully let it go? That is meditation. So yes, then you can see why it is important to then switch your mind, basically, yeah, and to be free from that suffering, continuous suffering, yeah.
I haven't heard you mention, maybe I missed it, I haven't heard you mention a creator.
The creator? So in the concept of Buddhism, we don't have the concept of creator. Am I right? So is that what you're asking? Yeah. So we don't have that concept of a God. So Buddhism is a non-theistic, we call it. It's just, you know, no concept of a God or gods, you know, does not make us not spiritual. It's just that according to Buddha, that concept of God and gods does not necessarily help us in our, you know, cultivation process, in our realization of enlightenment. It does not really help a person, basically. Having said that, though, my own take of that is I practice Buddhism as a matter of philosophy, as a matter of all that I've just mentioned, right? You know, the Eight Noble Path, the essential truths, the universal truth. To me, it's philosophy. But I do practice it in a sense, in the same conviction, the same commitment, the same faith, if I even want to put it, as if I was practicing Catholicism. I was Catholic, and I understand what that means. To be committed, to be convicted, like as if it's a faith and a belief system, if I may use it, right? Institutional, you know, faith, if I may put it that way. I practice it in that same way. So in that way, is it a religion? Yes, it is. In that way, it is. So I hope that answers your question, sir.
Yeah. Do we have time for one more, or do we need to wrap up? I think
we have time for one more.
Okay.
One more?
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
What would you say are one of the biggest misunderstandings of Buddhism? And we've talked about karma and reincarnation and the principles of a faith as in living out a philosophy of, but what would you have us know about what Buddhism can teach Christianity and what Christianity can teach Buddhism, and any things that are just misunderstood?
Sure.
Primarily.
And I think my first answer to that is there is no one thing. There is no one thing. That's how I would answer it. I think, yeah, there is just no one thing, basically, right? You know, that what is the most, you know, we give that, again, that definition, right? We attach it to it, like what is the one thing, right? That tells you apart or no. But good point, that last question you have is, what can we teach each other, basically, right? What can we teach each other is many things, actually, right? And what I would say would be that, and I think, I don't know, Reverend, I was looking at Reverend Tracy, maybe we can discuss this in a little bit more, is that Buddha nature in every one of us. Yeah? I give it a label, Buddha nature, because it is part of what I am now, right? But it's that universal realization that there is goodness in all of us. That we can teach, that I can teach to everyone. And I think I have very few people who will disagree with me that there is always that in all of us. We forget, right? Through our socialization, through our culture, through our education, where we live, and our own experience, right? We forget that there is the truth, the universal truth. There is good in all of us, there's compassion in all of us, there's goodness in all of us. We just need to find it.
In Christianity, I think the similarity would be that we believe that we all are born with the image of God in us, and that same notion that we forget, and therefore that's sort of the source of sin. But to the extent that we can remember that we are created in the image of God and live into who God calls us to be, we're able to live with more compassion and all of those things.
Thank you. Yes.
And seeing Christ in others, for Christians probably, I mean, you're talking about not just recognizing your own Buddha nature, but recognizing that it exists in others
correct.
would probably inspire you to treat them in a way that's more compassionate, in the same way that Christians look for Christ in the in others, even when it's very difficult.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes. And that's even more important to see, to have that mirror of yourself, your journey in the other person. That's even more important. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Will y'all please help me thank them?
Thank you. Thank you.
Learned so much.
I have to revise my sermon from the first service to the next service based on what I just
New
learned.
info came in, Thank you all. Please come back for Judaism next week.
Yes.
So, we'll look forward to...
So we have about 5 minutes to transition to our 11:15 worship service. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love it.